What's up, Gator Nation? Zach Abolverdi and Nick Del Torre here, coming to you live from Jacksonville following Florida's 43-20 loss to the nation's #1 team, the Georgia Bulldogs. And they looked like it on Saturday. The Gators jump out to a 7-0 lead. And then, Nick, it was all downhill from there. The Gators offense basically falls apart in that first half. The defense gets put in some unfortunate situations with the short turnover. And the Gators this game got away from them pretty quick. And not much that you can say other than this is a team that's much better, much deeper, much more talented than the Gators. And it showed here in Jacksonville.
Yeah, like I know you guys got sick of hearing me talk about Georgia, but like that's just the unfortunate happenings of having a bye week and only being able to talk about this game.
And also only being able to talk about South Carolina. Like that win just got better and better as the bye week got longer and longer.
Yeah, South Carolina stinks. South Carolina and Vanderbilt are probably the two worst teams in the entire conference. And Florida beat them. Like, you won, but I think what you saw on the field is a team that is reloading. Is Georgia as good as they were last year? No, but they were like the Monstars from Space Jam last year on defense. Like, just ridiculously good. And to me, this is not – Florida didn't lose this game on that 4th and 1 call. Florida didn't lose this game when the punt gets blocked. Florida lost this game because Georgia's recruited at an elite level for the last 7 years. And the last coaching staff couldn't care less about recruiting. So, yes, you can go out and do what Lincoln Riley did and hit the portal hard, or do what Mike Norvell did, hit the portal hard. Yeah, I see as we're filming this, might lose to Cal. So the portal is a Band-Aid. And I think what you're seeing now is Florida has an elite class this year. They had an okay class last year. They had an elite class this year. You need to continue winning battles, not only to get players of LJ McCray's caliber, but beating out Georgia for those players. Because the lines of scrimmage tonight,
so you took the words.
Those aren't the same. They're not the same caliber. So Florida just didn't. And looking at this game for 2 weeks, I thought Florida doesn't stand a chance on either line of scrimmage, and that's where the game's going to be decided.
4 sacks on Graham Mertz. 2 of them he fumbled. 1 of them he lost. No sacks on Carson Beck.
Yeah, I mean, Carson Beck was protected better than a newborn baby in a hospital. Just weren't getting near him, and that's how Georgia has recruited on the offensive line.
Yeah, and you could see the difference there on both sides. Florida, they did what they needed to do in terms of scoring on their opening drive. They targeted Trey Wilson a lot in this game, which was great to see. Almost another 100-yard game from Ricky Pearsall. And actually, when Florida tried to run the ball, they actually, Montreal Johnson, I did have a 40-yard run. So his average, got jacked up. But Trevor had a good average as well. But Florida, once again, they got down and they couldn't get in a situation where they could run the ball and try to control the clock. They're playing catch up, and that is not how this team is built, especially not against an opponent of that caliber.
No, and I thought, obviously, listen, Brock Bowers not being in the game was going to be a huge talking point. And I understand why you would get excited about that if you're a fan, but
then Duck scores on the opening drive.
Brock Bowers has played 0 snaps on defense, and that's a nasty Georgia defense.
Yep.
Regardless, okay, they don't have the same defensive line. They've got 3 first-round safeties, and you can only put 2 safeties on the field at one time. So, is it a measuring stick game? Sure. If it is, you can point and say, well, you're 1 point worse than you were last year.
Yeah.
But to me, I think Florida is still sort of on schedule. Now, listen, if you lose next week at home to Arkansas at noon, that train that's on schedule is completely derailed, and we're coming in with hazmat suits to clean it up. But I think Florida's still on schedule. When I look at this team, Eugene Wilson sets a freshman record for most catches in a game. Jordan Castell continues to start. TJ Searcy made a tackle 50 yards down the field.
Shamar Gaines was
guy.
Left the game.
Yeah. So to me, Florida is just a young team learning how to win, playing against a team who hasn't lost since 2020 on this field.
Yeah, and Florida, they got their first opening drive touchdown against Georgia since 2009.
That's crazy. We were in college.
Yes. So I think Graham Mertz had a great answer in postgame. He was asked if this could have the potential to snowball.
We've seen it. We've seen this exact Georgia game. A result like this turned into 2 losses.
Yes, it has. And very much dismissed that notion, but I love his answer. Basically, straight up said, which Billy didn't, and he got asked opportunities to say it, and Billy wouldn't give that excuse. But Graham basically said, "Look, we got beat by a really, really good team, and we are a really, really young team, and so we're not going to act like it's the end of the world or this wasn't supposed to happen." I mean, I think it was. Now that doesn't make that doesn't erase the fact that you got to go in there and look at film study and see the fact that you had possessions where you shot yourself in the foot and you still did things defensively that made it even harder on yourselves to try and compete in this game. But at the end of the day, nobody other than Chris Doering and Dan Mullen had Florida winning this game. So they can still go out, beat Arkansas, and try and find one more win to improve their win total on the season and still have this thing headed in the right direction. But they got to bounce back from this. They got to get a win home at home next week against Arkansas, and then they got to find one more win. I think 100% they cannot lose or end the season on a 0-3 losing streak again. So whether that's at Missouri, whether that's at home against Florida State,
it would be. I think that's the one the fans would like the most.
it is. There's a lot that fans would like right now, and I know that they're not happy after this result. But
I mean, you shouldn't be. You shouldn't be. So like, we're looking at this game from like a beat writer covering it.
bird's eye view.
So like, I totally get it. Like all week, I get why fans were sick of my nonsense. By the time we got to this game, I get why they're not happy about losing. But like, the programs just aren't. They're not on the same page yet. They're not in the same book. I think Florida's walking into the library of where the Georgia book is. But like, if you're being realistic with yourself, the way that the two teams have recruited, like that was going to be maybe it didn't have to be 43-20, but like that was going to be an outcome that you should have expected coming in this game. Georgia's bigger, stronger, faster, and more talented than Florida.
Anything, Florida fans, you should be, if you're looking on the bright side, be happy Brock Bowers didn't play.
That's that. I mean, that could, yeah. Yeah.
He wasn't missed at all today.
Right. No. I'm sure me and along with all Florida fans wish him a long, slow recovery. That doesn't have to be slow. Come back next week. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter to Florida now.
He won't be back here next year for the cocktail party.
No. I think he'll be making a lot of money next year for the cocktail party. What I am impressed with, or what I do think we should be focusing on a little bit, is those young players, because they did get to experience this cocktail party. I think Graham Mertz comes back next year, and I think he'll have the experience. So I think Florida, knowing, like, listen, I think I just tweeted this, but like, we knew there'd be growing pains. It doesn't make this feel any better. Like, you probably knew before the season, like, probably going to lose to Georgia this year. It doesn't make this feel any better, but the players that are the best players on the team are players that have been recruited by the staff. It's definitely not their time right now to be a dominant team like Georgia, but I think you have pieces on this roster that you can build around. You have a quarterback coming in who, in my opinion, is a franchise guy that you build a championship team around.
Yep.
You've got 3 5-stars. So, like, Florida's building, they're just not there yet.
And how many years is Kirby into this thing?
Kirby hasn't had a recruiting class ranked lower than 3 since his first year when they were 11, which was higher than Florida's class last year.
So it's going to take several years to stack classes of that same caliber so that results like that don't happen anymore here in Jacksonville. And it was going to take a miracle for Florida to win this game, and Georgia to probably commit 4 to 5 turnovers and have some starters get injured and leave the game.
I think I said on our show, like, Florida has to play a damn near perfect game of football on their end and hope that Georgia makes mistakes.
When Graham lost the fumble inside the 20, game was over right there.
The game was over the last 7 years when the two programs were recruiting.
And you've mentioned that, but I do think it's important as fans will fixate on the 4th and 1 or the block punt or like moments in the game. The refs, they didn't help out, but like nothing was changing the result. and I think also the fashion of this outcome. So all Florida can do is pick itself up.
Yeah.
You know, come back home next week. They've showed that they can bounce back from losses. You know, I think probably some frustration in losing to Kentucky, some frustration in losing at Utah. There's no shame in losing to Georgia, even though it was dominant in this fashion. You got to move on, and they feel like they will. You know, Graham thinks that they're going to be able to bounce back from this based on the way that that locker room is. But it is still a locker room that is very young, and they'll come back here next year to see if that margin is a little bit better than 1 point less.
I'm slowly talking myself into, because I know we talked about how tough the schedule is next year, but I'm starting to look. I'm like, there's a bunch of quarterbacks not coming back. A bunch of these FSU loses like 18 players. I'm slowly talking myself into really liking Florida's football team next year.
Nick just said that after a 43-20 loss to Georgia. How we arrived at that conclusion.
I really like the freshmen that are playing right now, and I really like what Florida is getting in this next class. So it might be positive, Nick, all 2024.
Well, I know on a positive note, shout out to Matt Hutchinson for the ASAP quotes tonight. All positive stories coming from Gators Online. So make sure you guys check it out. We will recap this game as much as we can, as much as you'll be willing to read, and then we'll be back at it Monday to turn the page and get ready for the Arkansas Razorbacks. For Nick Del Torre, I'm Zach Abolverdi. We'll see you guys.